So we'll be looking at metadata. What do we understand by the term metadata? So I have here a video, a very short video that I would like us to listen to. The video that was created by the Statistical Service Center, and it talks about metadata.
Researchers are often confused by metadata and what exactly a metadata document should contain. In this short video, we try to explain what we understand by metadata and show how your standard documentation can fulfill your metadata requirements. So what exactly is metadata? Well, it is information to enable a researcher to fully understand a data set. This is often referred to as data about data. Over recent years, there have been attempts to standardize metadata requirements. These include the Data Documentation Initiative and the Dublin Core Metadata Initiative. There are also several metadata editors available. Although useful in themselves, these initiatives are quite technical and to a typical researcher can seem quite daunting and off-putting. We will try a different approach. So what should be included? Well, imagine you were presented with a typical dataset like the one shown here. In order to understand this dataset, there are several questions you would need answering. This might be, where did this dataset come from? What study does it belong to? Can I have details of the study? Where was the data collected and when? Who carried out the study? What does each column represent? Are these coded data or real values? And if they're coded, what do each of the codes mean? How were the data collected, etc.? Your metadata should address these questions. Some of the questions are study level questions. So we would have one level of metadata to describe the study. We refer to this as the study catalogue. Think in terms of what, when, where, who. So for example, what is the study about? When was the study carried out? Give start and end dates if known. Where was it done? Describe the location. Who carried out the study? Who were the individuals or organisations involved? Other questions, such as what does each column represent, are data level questions. We refer to this as the data dictionary. For each variable in your dataset, you should include the data type, a variable label to briefly describe it. If it's coded variable, then value labels will be needed so users can interpret the data correctly. Have you used any missing value codes, and if so, what are they? Here we can see part of the study catalogue for the CCAF's Household Baseline Survey. This includes a brief description of the study. Also included would be a reference to other documentation, in this case the training manual. The training manual for the Household Baseline Survey includes a full description of the study, how sites were selected, the sampling methods used, the implementation plan, plus details of the sections of the questionnaire and why each section has been included. In the questionnaire used for the survey, we have included variable names. This alleviates the need to have a separate document with all the variable labels. We've also included many of the codes within the questionnaire. A couple of examples visible in this extract are the relationship of the respondent to the household head and the household type. Where there are too many codes to fit onto the questionnaire, we have included a separate codebook. Part of the codebook is shown here. This extract shows some of the crop codes that were used. Okay, you say, but what's the minimum I need to provide metadata? Do I need to produce a separate document? Well, no, not necessarily. For the household baseline, we have the study catalogue giving a summary description, and we have the training manual giving a fuller description. This satisfies the requirements at the study level. At the data level, we have the questionnaire, which includes the variable names, and we have the codebook. If we had included any derived variables, we would need a document describing the calculation methods for each of these variables. But as there are no such variables included in our archived data, the questionnaire and codebook together fulfill the requirements for metadata at the data level. So to summarise, think about the two levels, the study catalogue and the data dictionary. Ensure that the documentation that you supply gives enough information for the user to fully understand the study and the data.
Oh, thank you for listening. So what can we summarize from this video? What do you understand by metadata in your own words? Kiara, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, from the presentation itself, the way I understand metadata is just the information that helps a researcher to understand the data set, the data that, the data set. I should put it in that way.
Thank you.
That's what I got.
Yeah. And we have one response from Julie. She says metadata is data about data. And Shayla gives a better understanding of the data. Thank you. So I also try to summarize those. So basically, metadata is data about data, and it's more like the structural information that describes, locates, explains. Oh, sorry, I didn't do this right. It's the structure information that helps us to describe, locate, explain our data to make it easy for others and for ourselves to retrieve it, use it, manage, like also to manage that information resource. So metadata also gives you an idea on how a certain data relates to other data sets, and how maybe like you can organize those, like, you know, we've talked about file naming, so you have studies that are similar or quite related. So with metadata, it helps us to structure that. So it helps us to put our data into context with our other data sets. And basically, there are two types of metadata. We have the descriptive metadata, which mostly is looking at the what, the who, the why, the when, and then the structural metadata that covers the how about that data. And then metadata is not just about the experimental studies. You can have metadata for your music, for your movies and all that, because it really helps to put something into the context of other things. Today in the morning, I was trying to check on a certain bread spread that I use, and I realized they also have some bits of metadata for that. So basically, metadata is helping you and others understand your data and be able to make connections and provide context. And by doing so, it shows the relationship between different data sets and helps us to understand them. The information that is contained in the project metadata should be sufficient to enable others who wish to find your data or properly cite your data in their research. So in case someone is reusing your research, this metadata would help them, give them an idea of how they should cite your data. And when creating metadata, consider the 4 W's actually and the 1 H, whereby the 4 W's include the who, the what, the where, the when, and then the H is how of your project and what you have included. And you ensure that you have a persistent identifier so that people can easily retrieve this data. by using that identifier. So metadata, in summary, is communicating to us why you collected the data collection methods, and include all the names of the data and then analysis files that are related to a given study. Define the data and treatment codes. We've looked at those in they talked about the data dictionary and then the study catalog. So that's more like all the information that is contained in those. And we talked about missing data codes. So these should also be included in your metadata, and as well as the units of measurement for the different columns within a data set. So the minimum elements that are commonly included, at least we should have a creator or the author. So here we have the complete names, then institutional affiliations of those who created that data or that resource. Then we have a title, which should be meaningful and descriptive, so that in case, by just looking at the title, you have an idea of what it contains. So if it's of interest to you, you're able to easily retrieve it rather than having to think, whether, okay, like metadata would make it a bit easier for you to see what you would need and whether you need to retrieve it or not. Publication date is also a very important element. And then the persistent identifier, or the location where that resource, that data file can be found, or analysis files can be found. So when possible, it's also advisable to include the following elements. We have the resource type. If it's tabular data, is it database, is it an audio, is it an image, and so on. Who are the publishers? And some projects are funded. Okay, most projects are funded. So in case you have a grant, it's advisable you put a grant name, an abstract, and the description, and the preferred citation format for those who are using your data. You give them an idea of how you want them to cite your data, as well as related publications. You should also include rights, like, how can they use your data, under what, like which licenses, which restrictions should be applied to that data. Then we will still have a version. A number increase when the data changes. So like every time you have a different, some changes, this number changes. So you should include that, so that when someone goes to maybe an older document, yet they were looking at that for the new one, they have an idea of what happened.